when I show like your bread, the way that you tucker.
Alright, what's up? It's Robinson, and this is our last lecture of public policy. And the lecture is 5.10, Makers of Foreign Policy. This is a lot of information that we have kind of learned already. So I won't go into depth as much, because we learned it in the executive section, and we learned it in the Congress section. Alright, so who are the key players in foreign policy? Well, foreign policy is a shared responsibility of the President and Congress. And a system of checks and balances applies, like declaring war. We had a FRQ on this. Only Congress can declare war, but the President is Commander-in-Chief of the troops. They share power in regards to treaties. The President makes them and gets foreign leaders to sign with him, but only the Senate can ratify the treaty. And because of that, they often use executive agreements instead of treaties. The President also deals with Congress in regards to appointments, like, say, an appointment to like as an ambassador. So the President makes the appointment, but the Senate must approve them. Alright, so what's the key thing here? That foreign policy power is shared between Congress and the President. Despite these shared responsibilities, though, the President is the one primarily responsible for foreign policy. And that was determined in a court case, if you want to know it, U.S. v. Curtis Wright. And he has a lot of support in the executive branch to help him deal with handling foreign policy. Lots of little agencies and things, so let's look at those. The number one most important thing you need to say, if I ask you what department works with the President on foreign policy, number one answer is Secretary of State. The Secretary of State, or the State Department, that's the cabinet level that's most responsible for foreign affairs. Today, our Secretary of State is John Kerry, and 2 years ago, our Secretary of State was Hillary Clinton. So there are other cabinet officials too, like Commerce, Treasury, Defense, Agriculture, that also have some input. Then there's this thing called the National Security Council, and if you've seen that picture of Obama whenever they're watching Bin Laden be killed, let's look it up right now. Obama watching Bin Laden. This is kind of a famous picture. You got Hillary too in it. This is back when she was secretary. Let's copy this and throw it in my PowerPoint. The people in this room are the National Security Council. Alright. There's the picture. Here's Obama with his National Security Council. It's kind of a famous picture because you've got Hillary kind of gasping at what's going on a little bit. Although I think she said that she was about to sneeze. Alright, so the National Security Council, they coordinate policies that affect national security. And they include members like the President, Vice President, Secretary of State, that was Hillary, and you saw Biden in that picture, Secretary of Defense, CIA head, and National Security Advisor, and others. The National Security Advisor has emerged as a key player who sometimes has more influence than even the Secretary of State. Like Henry Kissinger was Nixon's advisor, and he had more influence than the Secretary of State back then. So presidents might rely more on the NSA because they're literally closer to the President. NSA is not the same as that agency that we'll talk about later. Alright? So this is the National Security Council. National Security Council. Alright, who else deals with foreign policy? Well, the Department of Homeland Security, and they were created under President George W. Bush after 9/11 to deal with anti-terrorism efforts. There is State Department and its Foreign Service. We already kind of talked about the State Department. U.S. Information Agency was kind of a propaganda agency. And the Director of National Intelligence, a new position that's responsible for overseeing all 15 intelligence agencies. Good luck with that. Let's talk about the CIA. The CIA is, well, let me go through this and maybe it'll give a better explanation. They gather and evaluate intelligence about other nations. So when you think of the FBI, we've done this before in class, FBI is more local, like local as in the United States. The CIA is like the FBI for the world, so they run around the world investigating information on other nations. It was created in 1947 to monitor the Soviet Union and the threat that they posed. In the 1980s, communism kind of fell, and the agency branched out into other areas like worrying about drug trafficking, terrorism, the spreading of nukes. Okay, they've also done some covert operations. Covert being secret. They helped overthrow the governments of Iran and Guatemala in the 1950s. So they've done some possibly a little shady things in the past. There's some question about whether or not how can you have the CIA that's doing these things in a democracy and such secrecy? Can the two coexist? And this concern has led to the creation of oversight committees in the Congress to help investigate and make sure that the CIA is not overstepping its boundaries. The terrorist attacks of 9/11 renewed a call for a stronger CIA. So in the last 13 years, we have seen the CIA get even stronger, along with the NSA get even stronger. All right, and the Obama administration released memos regarding the use of CIA using torture during the Bush administration. We talked about waterboarding before. Remember, Obama ran on a platform that said waterboarding is torture and torture is wrong, and we should not torture terrorists, even if it means finding out new information. That America should be better than that. Lastly, there's the NSA, and we've talked about this in class a lot. They use huge cryptologic and surveillance techniques, and basically they're watching over the whole world and the United States, analyzing maybe your emails. If you mention keywords like bombs and nukes and plane, they might come and knock on your door. Apparently they're monitoring cell phone data, text messages, internet usage, Facebook profiles. They're monitoring everything, even possibly, Apple with their, FaceTime and stuff. They're watching kind of a lot more than maybe we anticipated. And on our study guide, I have some questions about Eric Snowden. So I'll go into Eric Snowden for a second. Eric Snowden, he was a contractor that worked sort of for the NSA, and he borrowed his friend who did work for the NSA. He borrowed his login and stole basically a bunch of PowerPoints and Word documents, I think hundreds of thousands of documents, that showed what the government was really doing. Because 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't really know that they were spying on our phones. It was kind of rumored, but it was not 100% certain. And the stuff that Eric Snowden stole basically proved that in fact they are doing this, and he was kind of disgusted by this, the fact that America would do this. So he's releasing the documents kind of one by one, and every week it's like you learn something new, like that they read your text messages, or that they even go on World of Warcraft and listen to conversations and stuff. Every week some new piece of information comes out. It's made America slightly look bad. It's made other nations not like us even more, because it's come out that we spy on them. And today Eric Snowden is on the run from America. He was in China when he released the documents, and now he's in Russia because they granted him asylum for a year. And he may be interested in going someplace else. And so it's up to you to decide whether he's a hero or a villain, because what he did is illegal. And if he comes back to the U.S., there's no doubt he'll get life in prison. And what do you think? Do you think he deserves life in prison? Is he a terrorist, or is he a hero? Something to think about. Alright, what influences foreign policy? Well, public opinion does. For instance, we have this thing going on right now with Russia and that Crimea, which is part of the Ukraine. And it looks like Russia has basically completely taken over that portion. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so like I was saying, public opinion plays a role in whether or not we go to war and that kind of thing. So I was talking about Russia and Crimea, that Russia straight up is taking this part of another country, and America's not doing anything about it because right now we are pretty weary of war. Wouldn't you agree? So about 75% of the public, that's 3 out of 4 of you, don't know anything about what's going on in the world in foreign policy, unless there's maybe a crisis involving the United States. About 20%, maybe that's where I fall, are attentive and aware and interested. Maybe some of you guys fall in that category. And then there are opinion makers like journalists, government officials, think tanks that actually can influence the opinion of others. Look at Mr. LaVenture warming up his lunch. Look at Tracy diligently working on her FRQ. Okay. I am actually. This is real. Yep. Okay. This is what you have to do in AP Government, because if you didn't spread notes out, you would just do notes the entire class forever until the end of time. And you would run out of time. Okay. How about interest groups? They have an impact on foreign policy. For instance, the situation in Israel and Palestine. We haven't barely talked about that in here, but America very much supports Israel, and big players in that are pro-Israeli interest groups, just like I'm sure there's pro-Palestinian interest groups that kind of lobby the president. Do you know what a think tank is? I always pictured like a tank full of people thinking, like a swimming pool, tank or something, where they just sat there and thought. It's a name for like an organization of people that literally think about stuff. They get paid to think about stuff and form opinions, and they're influential, possibly. They usually have an agenda, like they're conservative or they're liberal. Okay, how about other nations? This is interesting. Actually, have lobbyists. So, Venezuela will have a lobbyist come and talk to the president about, hey, you should expand trade with us. Wouldn't that be nice? This issue led to people like Ross Perot putting the government on blast for talking to the lobbyists of foreign nations who obviously don't have the best interests of the U.S. in mind. So if you have a lobbyist from China, he probably wants China to be successful, not the United States. Political parties play a role in foreign policy, but as we learned in class, a lot of times foreign policy is one of the few areas where we have bipartisanship, where Democrats and Republicans actually will agree on something, unless things have gotten nasty. Hold on, gotta pause. Okay, sorry, back to the PowerPoint. One thing that we've seen in America is that the political parties do actually tend to agree kind of on foreign policies. So if Obama wanted to take military action to protect Crimea in the Ukraine, perhaps the parties would kind of agree with that. I don't know. Today everything's so partisan, but in the past, generally speaking, the parties are pretty much willing to go along with each other when it comes to military action until the American citizens turn against something like the Vietnam War or something. Only then do they start to back off. The Gulf War, for instance, was supported by both parties. The Vietnam War, when it started, was supported by both parties. The Iraq War, the recent Iraq War and Afghanistan War, supported by both parties initially, but that would go to change over time. What else impacts foreign policy? Congress. All right, they have key checks on the president. They get to pay for the war. If they don't pay for the war's not going to happen, and the president won't be able to fight his war. They get to be the ones to declare war, although we know that war declaration doesn't happen very much these days. They get to ratify treaties, they get to approve appointments, and they have a key role because they have the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and they get to oversee foreign affairs. The trend in the 20th century has been to give the president great discretion in the area of foreign affairs. So we really give the president the torch to do kind of what he wants as an imperial president when it comes to foreign affairs. However, there's been some instances where Congress stepped in, like they refused to sign the Treaty of Versailles. They passed the Neutrality Acts that said that the U.S. would remain neutral in World War II. Vietnam was highly criticized by Congress. We have the War Powers Act passed kind of after Vietnam. When Vietnam's truce ended and the North invaded the South, Congress said, no, we're not going to send any troops over there. And they had a little bit of opposition to the Gulf War initially. Alright, and let's see. They rejected the Test Ban Treaty, nuclear treaty in 1999. Yada, yada, yada. Let's see what else. There was some criticism of Bush's security measures. I would argue, things are a little more partisan today, but overall, you can kind of get away with what you want as president in foreign policy. Hey, look, that concludes our notes. Answer the questions on Schoology. Answer all the questions in every section of your study guide. Look online. I've got the vocab for the unit on there. I've got a practice vocab quiz. And I even have, in the updates section of Schoology, I've got topics that are going to be on the test that I thought it might help you to know about. So thanks for taking the time to watch this lecture. Have a nice day.